The term mafia originally referred strictly to organized crime in Sicily, specifically Cosa Nostra, but it is often used as an umbrella term covering several criminal organizations throughout Italy. Up until its unification in 1871, Italy was fragmented into numberless states, ruled by local clans and families who hired private armies known as masnade to enforce law and order. Said armies were led by capitani and were composed of soldati. This kind of organization gradually morphed into the modern-day mafia. Unlike milites, who were the regular foot soldiers of ancient Rome and later the infantry soldiers of medieval Italy, soldati were soldiers of fortune. The term soldati is related to the Italian noun soldi, meaning money. When one clan conquered some of its neighboring states, chaos would ensue, and soldati would then be hired to protect the population from local tyrants and foreign invaders. Northern Italy, which was made up of several maritime republics and inland duchies, was sandwiched between the Frankish states to the north and the Papal states to the south. The 14th century Little Ice Age caused famine and unrest, and witches were blamed for livestock epidemics and various calamities. At the same time, the Black Death wiped out the poorer population of Italy. Efforts to restart the economy gave rise to a growing class of bankers, merchants, and skilled artisans. Although the warlock Medico di Patrone was the actual progenitor of the Medicis, and the maverick Salvestro was the original villain in the family, it was Giovanni that truly initiated the family's rise to power. He founded the Medici Bank in 1397 and became one of the richest men in Florence. The Medici family was connected to most other elite families of the time through marriages of convenience and partnerships. The Medici family funded the invention of the piano and opera and financed the construction of St. Peter's Basilica and Santa Maria del Fiore. They were patrons of the best Renaissance polymaths. Niccolò Machiavelli, born in Florence in 1469, formed a militia to fight elite families and the powerful papal states. The Medici family had him tortured and imprisoned for 3 weeks. Machiavelli unapologetically exposed Italian politics as being inextricably intertwined with deception, treachery, and crime. For most of the Middle Ages, southern Italy was controlled by Moorish, German, and French warlords, and in the 15th century, it came under Spanish rule. The Gardenias were a secret society founded in Spain in the early 15th century to help Spanish inquisitors persecute Jews and Muslims. Soon after serving their purpose, the Gardenias were ostracized by the Spanish Church. They found asylum in Calabria and morphed into the Andrangheta, which went on to become the most powerful crime syndicate in Italy. Soon the Papal States, expanding in central Italy, had to deal with the Camorra gangs confronting the Pope's army. About 5,000 mobsters were executed by Pope Sixtus V in the late 16th century. Some descendants of the Guelphs, who had sided with the Papal States in the 11th century, became known as the Black Nobility in the 19th century. Conversely, the Ghibellines gave rise to anti-clerical groups such as the Carboneria and Philadelphia. As a result, the Church issued an edict forbidding all secret societies, and in 1821 exiled Carboneria leader Gabriele Rossetti. In London, he married Frances Polidori, daughter of another Italian exile, and they had 4 children, all of whom were distinguished writers and artists. Under feudalism, the nobility owned most of the land and enforced the law through their private armies and manorial courts. The early mafia protected citrus growers and cattle ranchers, as these industries were particularly vulnerable to thieves and vandals. The mafia was more effective than the police at recovering stolen cattle. The outbreak of World War I accelerated economic differentiation in Italy, causing a wider wealth gap. This is seen as one of the key factors that triggered the emergence of Italian socialism on one hand and a modern version of the mafia on the other. Cosa Nostra members, who were then tacitly supported by Caltanissetta's Capuchin friars and Palermo's Black friars, became guarantors of trust and often meddled in politics so as to protect their own vested interests. Benito Mussolini visited Sicily in 1924, where he was received by mafia boss Francesco Cuccia, who told him that Cosa Nostra would provide protection while he was on the island. Mussolini replied he preferred his own armed escort to the mob. Spitefully, the boss instructed the townsfolk not to attend Mussolini's speech. Humiliated and outraged, Mussolini swore revenge on the mafia. More than 1,200 gangsters were convicted and imprisoned, and hundreds more were prosecuted in the following years. Many mobsters fled to North America and founded New York's 5 mafia families. In 1943, nearly 500,000 Allied troops invaded Sicily, leaving the island again in the mafia's hands. Starting in the 1960s, the village of Corleone in western Sicily became the stronghold of traditional Cosa Nostra. In 1969, Sicilian mobster Michele Sindona was employed by the Holy See as financial advisor. He commissioned the murder of lawyer Giorgio Ambrosoli and banker Roberto Calvi in 1979 and 1982, respectively, before they revealed his criminal dealings with the Vatican Bank. Meanwhile, in northern Italy, the anti-fascist Red Brigades were growing into a major threat to public order. Their members robbed factories and banks and kidnapped or murdered high-profile individuals. In September 1974, 2 bosses were arrested thanks to a Christian monk who, after a stint as a mobster, eventually turned into an informant. In 1978, the Red Brigades kidnapped Christian Democrat leader Aldo Moro after killing 5 of his bodyguards. Upon realizing that the government was not willing to negotiate, they shot him 11 times and left his body in a car parked in the center of Rome. In the 1980s, the Italian government arranged for the largest trial in world history, which lasted from 1986 to 1992. Sicilian prosecutors indicted about 500 mafia members, who in return ordered the killing of several judges and magistrates.